So today I think I'm gonna continue doing this Solana stuff. I did a bunch of research, but I couldn't figure out. I went and to their Discord, and looks like a bunch of people had the same problem as me with this Anchor stuff. I think it's a problem with the way they build it on Windows because it's very new. So the other way that I tried to do was trying to install everything from WSL from Linux subsystem, but then I was getting an error saying that it couldn't connect or couldn't find the host. So the other thing I tried to do was install a VM, and I was gonna do the whole stuff on the VM. I passed the stuff that I changed here into GitHub, and I was gonna clone the repo on the VM and continue from there to download that stuff, the Solana and this stuff, because in Linux I think it works. But then I had another problem with the VM because I think for some reason I think the Windows subsystem for Linux screwed up the VM settings or something like that, because the video is not I'm not being able to get the video right on the VM. So I decided that just not worth the time because I don't have time to do this. I have to do the other stuff. So I think I'm just gonna follow through this, reading the things and seeing what they done. And the other thing is that in order to deploy a contract on Solana from the small research I did, it costs around $200, and it's too expensive for me. And I think a better strategy is to just find a smaller a protocol where it's very cheap to deploy contracts, so I can build stuff there and learn a lot from there. And there's a bunch of protocols that use Rust as well. So my idea is to split my time 80%, using the 80-20 rule, where 80% of my time I'm going to be spending preparing for interviews and studying the stuff on the Turing website. That Turing is a website to get hired. They help you get hired, and they have a bunch of tests there. And last time I did this test, you can do them every 2 months. Last time I did it, I took a bunch of notes of what they were asking, and now I have a folder with a bunch of stuff to study. So I think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do hacker rank problems and then study this stuff on 80% of my time, and then 20% of my time remaining, I'm gonna research these blockchains, these other protocols that are made with Rust and that have cheap prices for deploying contracts. And then I think I'm gonna build some stuff, try to build something on these protocols and deploy the contracts there. So I don't think it's worth it to spend a bunch of time, unless I change my mind at some point and I decide that for some reason I want to build something on Solana. So I might go back on this and figure out. But for now, I think I'm just gonna follow through this. And this page, they are basically saying that you have to install Rust and Solana and Anchor, and then you need to use this Anchor, which is a library that uses Yarn, I think, under the hood, and builds a project for you. And then you use both Anchor and Solana. Solana you only use once to validate the nodes with this Solana test validator, and then you use Anchor test to run the tests. Before Anchor is kind of like a hard hat for Solidity, but is used for Rust. So I think I'm just gonna take pictures of anything here. I still wanted to get this done though, follow the whole thing just to see what they did and the structure of the project, because I also think it's gonna be helpful once I figure out the other protocol. And I think I'm gonna have to solve the VM stuff anyway at some point, because it's probably gonna be better to develop this blockchain projects on a virtual machine using Linux, because Windows seems to be terrible for this. And I think eventually probably they will figure out what they did wrong there. I think is a problem with the way they designed the Anchor stuff. Because I looked into their Discord and I researched the questions, and there was a bunch of people with the same question, and nobody had an answer for this. So I think it's because it's new stuff, and I also don't think it's worth it to spend my time figuring out and researching the way that it works under the hood. Both because I don't have experience with Rust, and because it's too much time to invest. But I definitely think I can. If somebody out there really wants it, they probably can solve it just by researching the way they did the library. Go ahead and open up my Epic project in VS Code. If you are on Windows, remember that this all needs to be done with WSL. I think another thing that is kind of confusing here, the way they did this, and it's probably because I suspect that Raza, I think it was Raza that did this, and I suspect that he's using Mac, or because the issue, or maybe I'm doing something wrong. I don't know, but the issue with the way they did this is that they tell you to install the stuff on Windows, but then they tell you later to use WSL. And the problem with this is that if you install the stuff on Windows, then the WSL machine doesn't recognize the stuff that you installed on Windows. Because from what I understand, the way that Windows Subsystem Linux works is that it separates the machine. You create a version of Ubuntu. It's kind of like having a VM where you have it's separated. The Ubuntu stuff, it's located in somewhere in your computer that's not related to the Windows operational system. So anything you do on Windows doesn't affect Ubuntu, and anything you do on Ubuntu doesn't affect Windows. And if you want to do something with WSL, it's better to open VS Code from the Ubuntu command, I think. And the difference is it shows up something here when you open up with the Ubuntu. I think you just press code like this. I don't remember really well. Yeah, you probably type code, then dot, then opens up the VS Code, and it's different here. Because you are accessing a virtual machine on the server, I think. That's the difference. So this machine, this VS Code doesn't have access to this one. And this one doesn't have access to this one. It's 2 different computers. So if you want to do this, it's probably better to install everything from Ubuntu from the beginning. But the issue I was having is that it doesn't recognize the host for some reason. So, and I couldn't find the solution to this. Okay. Note, I didn't actually install the Rust extension for VS Code. It already has syntax highlighting for me out of the box, a basic program. Let's write our first Solana program. This Rust code is going to live in the lib.rs file. Here's what it looks like. Use anchor like prelude. From the little I know about Rust, the way that it works is that this cargo file, usually when you initialize projects on Rust, you type cargo init, and then it's going to create a bunch of files for you. And one of the files that it creates is this cargo.tom. And this is responsible for the package management stuff. It's a file that handles that. So I think it's similar to the way that Python uses the sys library, sys modules, which I think is one of the built-in libraries to load other libraries to run simple programs, because everything requires you to have the compilers and all the stuff like that. And then you can use this keyword to use libraries as well, kind of like in C++. And I think that the way that you access classes is the same way that C++ does, with these dots here. Clear ID. I assume this is probably the wallet that it creates on the previous step. And then in Rust, they have something they call macros, which I didn't understand really well. Is an advanced concept in the language. But from what I understand right now, is similar to the way that decorators work in Python, where anything you put here with a hashtag and this square brackets is gonna run some program that exists in some library, and then it's gonna implement the functionality of the program on top of the whatever function you put here. I think that's the way it works. Okay, so using two libraries here. Then creates public function, starts stuff off. A lot happening here, so let's just step line by line. Again, if you don't know Rust, don't worry too much. I think you can pick this stuff up pretty quickly. You won't become a Rust master like this, but you can worry about that later. A simple use declaration at the top, kind of like an import statement. We want to import a lot of the tools Anchor provides for us to make writing Solana programs easier. I always forget to see if I have the thing on the right channel here. Simple use declaration at the top, kind of like an import statement. We want to import in a lot of Anchor. I think I'm gonna put this full screen because it's annoying to have to both there. We'll cover this thing a little later. Basically, this is the program ID and has info for Solana on how to run our program. Anchor has generated this one for us, we'll be changing it later. This is how we tell our program, hey everything, this little module below is our program that we want to create handlers for, other people can call. We'll see how this comes into play. But essentially this lets us actually call our Solana program from our front end via fetch requests. We've seen this blah syntax a few places. They're called macros. They basically attach code to our module. It's sort of like inheriting a class. Yeah, so a lot of these concepts overlap. Basically, it's everything about fundamentals and first principles. Every language has this stuff. One thing I don't understand is why people don't agree to make the names the same thing across all languages. It seems like there's probably a reason for this, but I still don't understand this. It seems like it makes things more complicated than they should be. Why not always use print, for example, to show up statements instead of using print and console log on JavaScript and then print ln exclamation mark on Rust? I don't get why they do this differently. Or maybe it's just because of the way that things developed through history. Sometimes a lot of these things show up simultaneously in different places and then they end up evolving differently depending on the space that from which they evolved. PubMod tells us that this is a Rust module, which is an easy way to define a collection of functions and variables, kind of like a class, if you know what that is. And we'll call this module my app project. Within here, we write function start stuff off, which takes something called the context and outputs a result. You can see this function doesn't do anything except call OK, which is just a result type you can read about here. Yeah, so this is a type from Rust where you can return an OK or an error, something like that. And it's just a type that comes with the language, as far as I know. So really this thing starts stuff off, it's just a function that someone else call, it doesn't do anything, but we'll change that. Lastly, we have this thing at the bottom. It will be more obvious why this is important later, but basically it's another macro. We will basically be able to specify different account constraints. And it will make more sense a bit later. Let's just get stuff running. While the script should see it working locally. We need to basically tell Anchor how we want our program to run and what functions we want to call. Head over to task my epic project.js. This is actually written in JavaScript. Go ahead and code this up. So it's creating a Node.js file, I think, because it's using require. This library, an asynchronous function, two asynchronous functions. One that runs main and exits. Sets the provider with the environment variable. I think this is similar with hard hat where you put the thing on the object, the URL of the provider, the RPC provider you're using. to communicate with the blockchain. We can step line by line here. First off, the run main thing is just some JavaScript magic to get our main function to run asynchronously. There's nothing special here. Happens here. First, with our anchor to setup provider, so it gets this data from Solana config get. In this case, it's grabbing our local environment. This way, Anchor knows to run our code locally. Later, we will be able to test our code on DevNet. Then we'll grab anchor.workspace.myapp project. And this is a super cool thing given to us by Anchor that will automatically compile our code in lib.rs and get it deployed locally on a local validator. A lot of magic in one line, and this is a big reason Anchor is awesome. Naming plus folder structure is mega important here. Example, Anchor knows to look at programs map. You use this. Oh, the other thing that I forgot to talk about is that when I tried to download Solana, it didn't work because apparently the latest version doesn't work when you try to do it with the curl methods that they provide. I think it's here. Somewhere here. This one that I was trying to do on stream. It doesn't work because of the version, but if you change this version here to 1.9 or something like that, 1.9.1 or something like that, then it works and you're able to install Solana. But then when you want to run the Solana validator, you can't run through the command X because from my Stack Overflow answer I saw it apparently uses something that is made for tar and bash scripts, which is Linux command line. So it doesn't work when you try to do it through the Windows command line, and you have to use git bash instead. But then you're able to run the validator. But I still couldn't find the solution for the Anchor stuff. So maybe if you want to do things with Solana that don't require you to use Anchor, maybe you can use another library. Then I think that might work to do it through Windows. Keep everything else in your Cortana the same. Finally, let's run it. Here's what I got in the bottom. If you're using VS Code, don't forget to save all the files you're changing before running your contest. Personally, ran into so many issues because I thought I saved the file, but in reality I didn't. Note if you see this error, attempt to load the program that does not exist. You can do so on address. This command and did it. As long as you see a transaction with signature, you're good. This means you successfully called the start off function, and this signature is basically your receipt. We have Epic, you've written a Solana program, deployed it to your local Solana node, and are now actually speaking to your deployed program on your local Solana network. I know it may not seem like much, but now I have a basic flow to do stuff. So same picture. I think I can actually don't need to take another one, just submit the same one. Right now our program does literally nothing. Let's change it up. Start gifts. I think we'll go faster through this. Yeah, apparently Solana everything is an account, and that's the way you handle everything. It's through the accounts. So they're creating a function that returns the result and returns this OK here, which is part of this result type. Base account, it equals, yeah, on Rust everything is a const unless you put mute inside before the variable, and then it allows you to change the value of that variable later. And whenever you use this is so you can borrow, and they call ownership, which is the same concept of C++, I think. Right, this is a reference to the variable and not the variable itself. It's the address of the variable. So you do this because if you call a function and you pass without putting this on, then you can't call the function again because the variable is destroyed by the garbage collector of Rust, of the compiler inside the function. And if you want to do it, use it the same variable outside, then you have to just borrow it inside the local scope of the function you're calling. So this ctx.accounts.baseAccount. I assume that's, yeah, get a reference to the account. Initialize total gifts, base account, total gifts. So maybe this is related to the JavaScript stuff. Attach certain variables to the start set of context. Also don't know what we want to store on this account. Also, this is a reference to this. No, doesn't seem like it is because this doesn't have uppercase there. Oh, here is the base account from this. And then it creates an account object with base account, which is this. And uses these macros here. Should probably a macros for integrating the Solana, the anchor stuff with the Rust. With Rust. Initialize an account, let's check out this line at the bottom. This is dope. Basically, it tells our program what kind of account you can make and what you hold inside of it. So here, base account holds one thing and it's an integer named total gifts. Then here we actually specify how to initialize it and what you hold in our stuff off context. User, signer, system program. Looks complicated. First we've got account init payer equals user space equals 9000. All we're doing here is telling Solana how we want to initialize base account. Note, if after running your task below you get error, transaction simulation failed, error processing instruction 0, constant program error, you need to change space 9000 to space 10,000. If you look at these docs from Anchor, you can see that they define a simple program that declares space equals 8 plus 8, e.g. 8 kilobytes plus 8 kilobytes. The more logic we add to our program, the more space it will take up. And it will tell Solana to create a new account owned by our current program. And everything is a program on Solana, apparently, which is the same thing, pretty much, as a smart contract. Payer equals user tells our program who is paying for the account to be created. In this case, it's the user calling the function. We then say space 9000, which will allocate 9000 mods of space for our account. Why are we paying for an account? Well, storing data isn't free. How Solana works is users will pay rent on their accounts with more on it here and how rent is calculated. If you don't pay rent, validators will clear the account. God damn. Here's another article from the docs on rent I liked as well. This approach accounts with 2 years worth of rents. Deposits secured are exempt from network rent charges. By maintaining this minimum balance, the broader network benefits from reduced liquidity and the account holder can rest assured that their account data will be retained for continual access usage. We then have pub user signer, which is data passed into the program that proves to the program that the user calling this program actually owns their wallet account. Finally, we have pub system program, a program which is actually pretty fucking cool. Freaking cool. Rather say fucking. It's basically a reference to the system program. The system program is the program that basically runs Solana. It is responsible for a lot of stuff. But one of the main things it does is create accounts on Solana. The system program is a program that the creators of Solana deploy that other programs like ours talk through. Idea of one-on-one. Lastly, we do this thing in our function where we just grab base account from the start set off context by doing context start set off. Again, a lot of this stuff may seem confusing, especially if you're new to Rust, but let's just keep writing and running code. think this stuff makes more sense the more you do write code. Run, get errors, fix errors, repeat. What to do, mute, should get our mutable reference to base account. When we do this, it actually gives us the power to make changes to base account. Otherwise, it'd simply be working with a local copy of base account. Retrieve account data. Let's put it all together. So we can actually retrieve account data now as well over in JavaScript land. Go ahead and update my app project. I added some comments on lines I changed. In this season program, we'll talk about this soon. So it's very similar to the Solidity actually. It just changes the libraries, but the principles remain the same, pretty much. Which is not surprising, like as I said before. First principles obviously, not obviously, but first principles are not gonna change. What changes is the details of each thing. So this is the RPC call, I think. Passing the parameters from the function that was created in Rust. Yeah, base account is this. Which probably generates a key pair. And then publicly. So it passes the key from the account and the provider. And then passes the system program. Which is probably related to the contract. Or to the account. Okay. Build a function to update give counter. Check out some changes below. So this is the same stuff from before. And then this function adds gifs, which is probably similar to this one. And the only difference is that plus equals 1 here. So this creates the account initially, and this adds gifs. Yeah, and the difference is also the context that's being passed here. So let me see what changes in this one. I think this is the only stuff that changes. Creates the program here, then does an RPC call and adds gif. I think program is this method here is probably getting the history of the account, and on the front end, on the React part, when when you place the GIFs, it probably connects that information with the account, and then you can retrieve from the account using these methods here. So every time you run anchor tests, you're generating a new key pair. Yeah. Not sure I'm fully understanding the connection between the front end and the back end. I think roughly yes. It's very similar to the way that hard hat works, basically. Maybe I have to remember what we did here. Yeah, because it uses the Solana stuff. No, Solana is the window. Yeah, but it connects the wallet with the window. I guess the public key. Yeah, I think this is the moment, the connection of the wallet there, that it gets the program or the account abstraction. And then that account is the same based on the key that is being retrieved with the anchor on the system program here, probably. I think that's what's going on. So it makes sense. Yeah, so on the front end, you make the request for the wallet, and through that request, the wallet's gonna sign with the private key and the public key, and it's gonna generate an abstraction of that account, which is called a program, I think. And through that, you're gonna add gifs on that account, and then on the back end, you're gonna but then at the back end, you use to store, I think, the gifts that the account buys. Yeah. By using this start off here. Yeah, this is the stuff that makes the information on the blockchain, I think. Oh, let me see this again. I think it was on the render the button thing here. If I remember correctly. Yeah, send GIF. That's where the logic. And this is just displaying the GIFs. Still don't know if I understand really well what's the moment where, because the send GIF is only changing the value of this GIF list here. With the input value. Maybe something I didn't do here. Because this is just gonna display the GIFs by mapping through the GIF list array, which is the test this array combined with whatever the input. Maybe they didn't do the logic of actually adding GIFs to the wallet. I'm trying to understand the connection between the front end and this part here. Or maybe it's the stuff that I didn't made that they talk about here. Yeah, this anchor. Yeah, this is on the JavaScript part still. Yeah, the Rust thing is confusing because I don't understand the context really well. I think I roughly understand superficially how it works. It uses these functions to create an account and then sends this through that call there, through this here, through the RPC to make the transaction in the wallet, I think. It's probably getting from the account the gifts. Yeah, that's probably what's going on here. Build the function to update gift counter. Oh, so this is the function. Yeah, but this is just updates the counter. Yeah, whatever. I'm gonna keep going. Setup back, check out some of the updates below. Let's now set it up where we can store an array of structs with more data we care about, like a link to the GIF and the public address of the person who submitted. And we'd be able to retrieve this data on our client. Yeah, so the integration is coming now, I think. So these are the same functions as before, I think. And they added stuff here. So it's building a struct with the GIF link and user address. Create a custom struct for us to work with. Starting from the bottom again, you see base account now as a param named GIFList. It's a of type vec, which is basically short for vector. You can read about them here. It's basically an array. In this case, it holds an array of items struct. Then I have this fancy piece of code to declare my item struct. Just holds string GIFList user. This is the function that is gonna add the GIF to the wallet. So you pass the GIF link there. I'm probably gonna change this function later, I think. Yeah, whatever. Just go fast for this. I just want to finish this fast, to be honest. To focus on the other stuff that I have to do. I think the strategy that I'm gonna implement for the other stuff is gonna be to study the things first. I think let me open here. The way that it works is basically you have a bunch of tasks here on Turing, and you need to complete a stack in order to be able to send or receive proposals. And because I didn't pass on any of the full ones that have a full stack, I failed on these ones. I think that my strategy is gonna be to study this first, so I can try to do one of these tasks, so I have one stack at least. And then while I do the other stuff, then I can receive or send proposals. And then obviously I'm gonna study for a bunch of other tests as well, because the more you can pass, the better. And then do the hacker rank stuff simultaneously while I'm doing this. We pretty much have a basic API now, right? We're able to post data and we're able to get data. And I also have to work on my portfolio as well. It's probably something that I'm gonna do off stream. At some part at least. And then I also have to do a course that I'm doing, finish the course on the ZTM. So a lot of stuff to do outside of this. Hopefully this Anchor stuff is not the only framework on the other protocols to deploy contracts. Otherwise it's gonna be really annoying to figure out how to use it. Doesn't seem that hard though. The hardest part is the understanding the Rust stuff because I'm not used to it. But I think, yeah, okay. Include your Solana Explorer link and attach a screenshot of your deployed program as well. Or the screenshot of it on Solana Explorer. Just gonna see if there's anything interesting coming up. Try to finish this fast. LDL file to the web app. I suspect this is the same as the RPC stuff where you gotta get this link to connect. Yeah, the provider information. you're gonna use this library, Solana Web3.js, projects are on Anchor. And then you're gonna make the call with these objects here. If you get an error related to buffer, edit to app.jsx. Let's declare a function called getProvider. Hey man, Joseph Urban, thanks for the raid. I'm gonna be done really soon, so yeah. But thank you anyway. So basically what I'm doing now is going through this Solana project here. I'm not gonna finish because I couldn't find a way to solve the Anchor stuff, which is a library that connects. It's kind of like Hard Hat for Solidity. It's a library that connects Solana with the JS part. And it seems like a bunch of other people had problems as well, where they couldn't figure out how to connect. There's a problem, I think, under the hood with the library that it doesn't work on Windows 10, and you have to use Linux or Windows Subsystem for Linux. Yeah, thank you. And because I don't have time, I have to prepare for interviews. I'm gonna study doing hacker rank challenges and also studying for using a folder that I wrote about a site. Let me show the site again, which is a site that helps you get hired. And they have a bunch of tests here. And 3 months ago, I did a bunch of these tests, and I wrote a bunch of things that they asked that I didn't know the answer to on this folder here on the desktop. And then I'm gonna go through these ones until I'm gonna study these ones and do these tests again until I'm able to pass a tech stack here. And after that, I'm probably gonna do record rank challenges first, and then do these ones, study for these ones, and do the tests. So because I don't have a lot of time, I'm just passing through this Solana thing because I already started. But I'm not actually doing the project. I'm just seeing if there's anything interesting. Because later on, I'm gonna divide my time. 80% of my time is gonna be devoted to trying to get hired and study for interviews, and 20% of my time is gonna be devoted to creating projects on Web3. But I'm gonna do projects on different protocols other than Solana because, as far as I know, to deploy smart contracts on Solana it costs around $200, which is too much for me. And I also think it's better to find a smaller protocol that is a lot cheaper to deploy contracts, so that way I can do a bunch of them and make a bunch of mistakes and learn from them before I try to do something on some protocol that requires a lot more money to invest. So I'm just trying to finish this as fast as I can until so I can start doing the other stuff. And I also have to work on my portfolio as well and finish another course that I'm doing, which is a ZTM course, Zero to Mastery, which is very helpful as well to learn and prepare for interviews. So this just sends the information with the function. And this is the same button from before. The same function. Probably they're changing some things here, but yeah. And for some reason, I'm not getting sound.
Heck is going on here, right? More later in terms of how to fix it. But for now, it's worth
Oh, now
like
it seems short. And that's weird. Oh, I think it's because I have to close this thing here.
So you're going to
Oh, there
notice
we go.
here that every time you do this one-time initialization for your program and you approve the transaction, it does the thing, right? It creates the account, and that's all good. And that's all good. But when we refresh the page, it suddenly says again, "Hey, you need to initialize the account for this program." So what the heck is going on here, right? Um, this is something that we talk about more later in terms of how to fix it. But for now, it's worth like understanding just what's going on underneath the hood. We have this thing here. This is the line that's causing us the trouble. Line 27, keyPair.generate. Pretty much, this keyPair.generate is saying every time that this like website loads, generate a new keyPair. And then what we're doing with this keyPair is we're actually creating we're initializing the program account with this keyPair, right? Because technically, this should only happen one time, right? It should happen one time in the very beginning. So that one time in the very beginning, someone's going to hit it's probably going to be us. We're going to come to our website. We're going to do the initialization for their program account. And then, bam, we're done. Base account has been allocated. And now anyone can come here and communicate with base account, right? But the problem here is that we're technically generating a new account. Rather, we're generating a new key pair every single time the website refreshes. So pretty much what happens here is like we're going to load our website and we say, hey, Solana, go get me the GIFs associated with the key pair, with the account associated with this key pair. And Solana will say, okay, let me go get that. But then it's going to crash, right? It's going to say, no, I don't actually have an allocated account with this key pair, which makes sense, right? Because technically every time we refresh the page, it's creating a new key pair. So the fix here is to actually have one key pair and have that key pair actually persist, right? So that so users can actually come to our website and only communicate with one key pair that you would initialize at the very beginning one time. And we get into that later. But again, this is like a good lesson in just how Solana is working. So hope that made some sense. And if it doesn't, don't worry. By the time you get to the next lesson, I kind of go over how to fix this and hopefully it becomes more clear then. But yeah, that's how it works.
I'm just submitting the same pictures. Ideally, if you're following the project, you should probably do this stuff. You should definitely do this stuff and submit the right pictures that they ask. I also made a fake account here to just do this stuff on stream. We're finally at the point where we can save some GIFs. It's so easy to do so. We're going to just change send GIF function. Just this function here. So this is on the React part. What's happening here is we're generating a new account for our program to talk to every time. So the fix is just need to have one key pair that all our users share. Under the source directory, go ahead and create a file named create keypair.js. In there, paste this in. All this script as it does is it will write a key pair directly to our file system. So it uses anchor again and this fast library. Okay, whatever. Next one. Hopefully there aren't a lot more lessons left. Okay. Something you're hyped to add or change with our gift portal app. Yeah, I'm not gonna put anything here. Anything. Super exciting that you made it to the end. Pretty big deal. Solana is super early and very powerful, and you've now gotten your hands dirty with the core tech. Have all the core skills to now go and build whatever you want. Okay, careers. Yeah, I think that's probably the end of it. Showcase, blah blah. Go.com. Maybe DuckDuckGo is better. I'm also not sure what site. I think I'm gonna start with HackerRank because it seems to be the best for coding interviews, but I'm not really sure if that's the case. I might do Code Wars challenges as well. And Letgo, not sure how to say that. But I think the best ones are probably HackerRank first, then Litgo, and then Code Wars. But I think Code Wars is the one that I'm gonna enjoy the most doing. So I'm probably gonna split my time between the three of them. And also, I'm probably gonna focus 50% of my time with Python, solving Python. Maybe I just do Python actually. I think I'll do Python first until I get really good at the challenges, and then after that I will do it with JavaScript. I think that's it. That's the end. Yeah, okay. Cool. So yeah, I'm gonna go and probably come back later today. Yeah. And the other projects that I'm gonna do with 20% of my time of building stuff on Web3, I think I'm gonna do off stream. But I'll think about it. So I think I'm gonna close this stuff here.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? So today we
Yeah, when I come back, I'm gonna do hacker rank challenges with Python. So see you then.